You're listening to Represent, the Queer Musical Theatre podcast. My name is Dr. James Lovelock, and I'm an academic and a huge musical theatre fan, exploring the representation of all things queer in the musical theatre industry. In this episode, we are joined by Georgina Coram and Mackay from the cast of the Sheffield-based musical, Gwenda's Garage. The musical is based on the stories of queer women who were involved in the real Gwenda's Garage in the 1980s and follows the characters through the political upheaval of Margaret Thatcher's Britain, including the enacting of Section 28 and the fight for the rights of queer people to adopt children. As always, you can follow us on your favourite podcast platform, and don't forget to share this episode on social media. Let's get started.
My name is Georgina Coram. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm currently playing Fiona in Gwenda's Garage.
I'm Mackay, pronouns she, her, and I'm playing Dipstick.
Hooray! So I came and saw Gwenda's Garage yesterday and it was fantastic. It's such a good show. But tell us a little bit about it. Tell us a little bit about your characters and that sort of thing.
Gosh, where to start? So Gwenda's Garage was a real place in Sheffield in the 80s. And it's about a group of lesbian mechanics who set the garage up to teach women how to fix their cars.
I think that's the main thing, isn't it? Because what we've heard from the people that were sort of around at the time is they were a mechanic's garage and they fixed the cars, but they also taught people how to fix their cars, so they didn't have to come back, and they had the skills and the knowledge to be able to do it themselves, which wasn't the best for business, but it was best. It was a great thing for the community.
Yeah.
It's a very community-based place, it was, and I guess the show as well.
Yeah. And the activism as well that was happening in the garage. There's a line in the show where Dipstick says, Gwenda's is the hub of feminist uprising, and Carol says, it's the hub of nothing, everybody was doing things, it's not just us. But the community that garage built, obviously, out of the archive, the production company that are putting the show on are a company that takes queer stories specifically out of archives and give them a life for people to learn about.
Give them a platform and let people today see them and hear about these stories. And
and the show is based off of an amalgamation of different oral interviews from people that were around at the time. So there's loads of different storylines woven into the 5 characters. The characters in the show aren't specifically based on people, but we again say in the show, none of this happened here, but all of it happened, and those characters have been created to tell all of those stories that did happen at the time.
It's such an amazing show, and I think for me, I mean, just any show that has a group of queer female characters, because so often there's one queer character in a musical, and so to see this show which highlights 5 different women and their different stories that they're going through there as well. So tell us a little bit about the characters that you play.
So I play Dipstick, who is the charming but clueless, is a quote, mechanic apprentice. She goes on a real journey through the show she starts off at 17, very young, very naive, and she sort of learns, I think the heart of Dipstick is learning through all of the different women that she encounters.
Yes.
So she learns a lot from Terry, from Carol, from Bev, and from Fiona, and there's a song in it, a duet with Dipstick and Fiona called I'm Learning. And it's just sort of her finding her community, finding her people. She's not necessarily had the best start in life, the best family background or whatever, but it's the chosen family that she finds, and I think a lot of people can relate to that. It's not
absolutely
set in the 80s or set in a different time. It's just, it's life, and
and sometimes it's really strange to think about all these things existing before we existed, or that we existed as queer people. I find that sometimes really mind-blowing to remember that. I think it's particularly because when we grow up, we often think of ourselves as perhaps being the only, on our own, and then to discover there's this whole history of queer people, and I think that's really wonderful. Tell us a bit about, is it Fiona?
So all the other characters in the show are from Sheffield, and Fiona is from Surrey.
Well, Carol's from Oldham.
Well, Carol's from Oldham, yeah.
Somebody has to be from Surrey, though, don't they?
Yes, and she's from Guildford, which is very near where I grew up. So it's
amazing.
The storylines of Fiona and my own life are very similar, which is surprising because it wasn't written for me. But Fiona is also really used as a vehicle to help the mechanics tell the audience the story of the garage, and also especially the political landscape of what was happening in Sheffield in the 80s. Fiona is very middle class, very much that heteronormative, went to university, married a man straight away, and that was sort of her life, and without giving too much away, relocates to Sheffield, meets all of these lovely lesbians, and has quite a few questions, I think, about what she envisioned for herself and maybe what she actually wants and what was expected of her from society.
Things don't necessarily go to plan, in inverted commas.
Yes. But I think it's really special for me as a queer woman to tell that story, because I think, especially with queer women, we grow up in a society where it's just assumed that you'll meet a man and that's it. I have loads of queer female friends who have come out much later in life, and it's not always a thing that you know when you're born, and I think that the media a lot of the time tells us that. So Fiona's story is very up and down. She's quite radical in her decisions, really throws herself right into all of the activism and loves being at the garage and having a grand old time, and I think all of the women in the show teach her something different. I think she finds that like flirty side of herself through Dipstick. Carol is very much the matriarch of the show and the person that everyone goes to with their problems. Bless her. And watching Bev and Terry's relationship, like the love story in the show, I think as well is really special for her. But she's good fun. She has a lot of funny gags and a lot of jokes are made at her expense, or her being from Surrey. But yeah, she's great fun.
I think that's so important as well. I mean, I'm from Hertfordshire.
Hertfordshire.
Well, it depends who I'm talking to. Sometimes I'm from Hertfordshire, and sometimes I'm from Essex. It depends who I'm talking to. Because I'm right on the border. But actually, there's something really different about, because this is the first time I've only been at Sheffield for about a year now. This is the first time I've worked in a northern city. I've been in Birmingham and sort of in the Midlands for the last 10 to 15 years. And there's something very different about the Sheffield community, I think, and something really welcoming. But equally, I think the way that southern people see northern people sometimes is, it deserves to be ridiculed. So I think it's lovely 100%. That it is.
Yeah, we've loved being in Sheffield. Like it's like you say, it's such a welcoming place. And I say this to everyone, the audience is here, and I don't know if it's because of the nature of the show or who's coming to see it, but I've never known audiences like it. They're so supportive, so generous, and it's amazing.
And there's such a big queer community here, which I wouldn't have necessarily known. I had never been to Sheffield before we did the show, but when we did the workshop of this show 2 years ago, we did like an R&D of it, but they ticketed 2 performance script in hand so that people could see it. Well,
they only planned to do 1, and then it sold out, so they added another one because the demand was so big.
And we were so shocked by that. And I've never seen so many lesbians in sensible shoes with glass, and they all knew each other. My partner came up to watch, and she texted me at the half and said, I'm sat down and all these lesbians are shouting at each other and waving from across the theatre, because there's just this huge community here that I never would have known about, and I think that's really special.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really important part of Sheffield, and the community here is very different too. So I've been in Birmingham, as I said, the last few years, and the community in Birmingham feels a lot more kind of centred around a particular place, whereas Sheffield feels like it's a community thing, and there's all sorts of, there's comedy nights, and there's plays, and there's creative writing, and there's art, and it's that kind of thing. And I suppose it's true of Gwenda's Garage as well, that it's about the community that it creates there and the things that the community do together. And I think that's really wonderful, and something that comes out so beautifully in that story as well. Tell us a little bit more about working in that space in the Playhouse Theatre at Sheffield, which is I guess does quite a few new musicals and new plays in there. So tell us a little bit about working there, because it's an interesting space to kind of put a new musical into, isn't it?
I mean, it's an amazing space as the studio theatre or the whatever of inside a bigger theatre space, it's massive, and it's I think there's something really special about Sheffield theatres as a whole, and the fact that they're all interlinked, and there's even that feels like such a community. The whole building, I don't know, just something really welcoming about it.
I think so much cool regional stuff comes out of Sheffield theatres as well, obviously Standing at the Sky's Edge and Jamie, and it feels like being part of a legacy, especially of telling northern stories, and it's just so nice. There's just this buzz, and it really feels like the larger Sheffield community of people are really invested in what's happening as well. When we got to Sheffield and moved into our digs, the Tesco delivery man, bless him, carried our food up 2 flights of stairs, and he was like, "Are you uni students?" And we said, "Oh no, we're working at the theatre." And he was like, "Oh, what show is it?" And we said, "Gwenda's Garage." And he was like, "Oh, is that the one about the female mechanics?"
Yeah, and he'd heard of it.
Yeah.
And we were like, "Oh my god!" Like, it just feels like a place that people are really excited to see new theatre and what's being created, which I feel like we don't maybe have that hub because we live in London. There's so much going on, but it really feels like everyone is drawn towards that theatre spirit.
And it's not lost on me, us sitting here with our southern accents, but
Yeah.
I do feel very lucky to be able to tell this story.
Yeah.
If you're interested in LGBTQ+ representation in musical theatre, check out our website www.queermusicals.com for lots more information about musicals with LGBTQ+ characters.
There's something really special about telling a story in a community about that community, I think. And there are other stories that have done it. I mean, if you go back as far as Blood Brothers, for example, and I think that's what makes a lot of our British musicals really successful, is when they're tied to a specific community or a specific event or that sort of thing. And so I think that's one of the things that's going to make Gwenda's Garage so successful, is because it's so tied into where it comes from. And it is, like you say, it's a very northern story, I think. I'm saying that again in my southern accent.
I think the other thing that's been super special about this process for us is that we are predominantly a team of queer women in terms of cast, creatives, production. Like, I've never had that.
Queer people, I guess.
Even at every level. And the whole writing team are all lesbians, which is amazing. And I don't know, there's something very different about working on a production that's so queer-centred and female-centred. And everyone just wants it to succeed so much, and I think that's why it feels so special.
Yeah, and I think during the process, we've, with any new piece of work, you're going to have your challenges, but I do think we've all really banded together, clubbed together to make it happen. And I think that's sort of the nature of it as well. It's been a real team effort and team push, and just the belief that we'll get there, I think.
Yeah, I think there's something about that idea of queer-led spaces. Or I think I've been doing a research project recently on this, which is what the previous series of this podcast is about. And I think I called it queer-infused practice.
Lovely.
Which makes it sound like a tea bag, doesn't it? But I love this idea of what happens when you put a load of queer people in a room together and let them tell their stories. And there's so many things that come out of that, I think. I think there's a way, if you're in a room which is full of other queer people, then you don't have to necessarily keep explaining things. And you can go right for the stuff that's interesting rather than, having to explain. And of course, you want there to be places where you do explain things and people learn and that sort of thing. But you also want there to be spaces where we can all start from this common knowledge, I suppose.
Well, yeah, you don't need to apologise or make anything smaller, because you're just coming from a place of, right, well, this is the baseline. And then we can grow from here, instead of, oh, is that too, is that too gay, or is that too, is that too in your face, or whatever. It's great.
And I think another thing that's really special about this show is that lesbian stories don't often get told, and especially queer stories from the 80s obviously have some amazing shows about the AIDS crisis, which is a super important story to tell, but I think often women are sidelined.
Yes.
And also to as much as the show has its ups and downs and everything that was going on politically with Section 28 is awful and very similar to what we're currently seeing in the media and the government with trans rights, this is also a story of queer joy.
Yes.
So often, like you said earlier, there's one gay person and they either end up dying or breaking up. Like, they don't ever get to be happy. And obviously the story needs to have some light and shade, but it is a queer celebration.
Yes.
And it's so nice to get to do that.
Yeah, and I love the fact that in this, somebody was talking about this, and they were talking about how lovely it is that you don't just have the black protagonist, you have the black villain, and you have, the black mother character or the best friend or whatever it is. And, and often I think, particularly as a queer person, often the character that I play will be the sidekick, the queer sidekick, and I'm the only queer person, and I come in and be a bit gay and then go off again. And
it's not often that minority groups get to be multifaceted and get to make mistakes and have flaws and stuff, because if you're the only minority character within a wider group, you have to be a stereotype, or you have to be sometimes two-dimensional. I mean, it's not always the case, but
I think that's really important as well. And I think the other thing that Gwenda's Garage does really well is it gets the intersections. It's one of the things I'm really interested in as well, is that, people are not just one thing. I am not just gay, I'm also non-binary, I'm also disabled, I'm also whatever the other things are. And actually, I think it's really important that we have stories about, race and sexuality and gender and social class, and all of those things are really important in Gwenda's Garage. I think especially social class as well. That doesn't always get talked about, and I think again it's very lovely between the two characters that you have there as well.
Yeah, and they have so much to learn from each other, I think. And there's that stereotype, isn't there, of northern musicals? There's that girl on TikTok that does it. It's like they all work down the mines, and like they're all. But like, I think this show does a really good job of showing that it's a sliding scale. And Bev, her character, she has kids and she owns her flat, and then Dipstick's also not from a great upbringing. So I think it's just showing that range of different northern voices as well, and northern stories, rather than it being so on the head.
Yeah, and the relationship as well between your two characters. I mean, again, it's left quite open, that relationship, but it's also really lovely to see. Yes, but it's also really lovely to see that relationship between different generations as well, or that at least there's some sort of age gap between them there. And I think that's really important as well. And as somebody that's been an openly queer lecturer for 15 years, and actually the number of times that those sort of friendships build up after the students leave university and stay in touch, and you're still having these sorts of conversations. And I learned so much from that, and I love watching that on stage as well. And it's a story I don't think I've seen very often, so it's lovely that that's in there.
Yeah, and I think that relationship is also quite that feels very much like what this process has been like for me, learning from an older group of queer people, because we did, in the rehearsal process, lots of oral history sessions with the writer Nikki and Yelena, the director, about what it was like to be a lesbian at that time. And I think whilst things aren't still perfect, we as queer people now have it much easier than they did back then, and I think sometimes that can be taken for granted. But they just did so much work, like picketing all the time, all the stuff that happened at Greenham Common, and I think it was really eye-opening for me coming into this project, learning all of that work that they have put in so that we can live as we are today, and also taking that on ourselves moving forwards and supporting trans rights and everything that's going on in the government right now. They did that for us, and it's like that passing of the baton, and I feel like that the show is really important for that as well.
Yeah, like the work's never done.
Yeah.
And it's, I think we're really lucky to have those voices in front of us in the room live to learn from, because you can do your own research. There's so much you can get from books and the internet and stuff, but having people who actually lived that is invaluable.
Yeah, and this show really is a call to arms, and I hope that people leave thinking
because it's not just about gay rights, it's about everything that's going on currently. It's individually we're one tiny voice, we have one tiny voice each, but if we put those tiny voices together, that can really change things, and that is so important to keep doing and keep working at and keep plodding along, and anything we can do is better than nothing. So yeah.
I found it quite emotional actually talking about Clause 28, because I was 8 when that came in, and that really did affect my whole time at school, and certainly my whole time, coming to terms with who I was and all of these sorts of things. And then for my students afterwards to say, I didn't realise that things were the same then as they are now, because a lot of my students recognise, particularly with trans and non-binary people, and with the Supreme Court ruling recently, and how many of those lines just feel exactly the same sort of thing.
It's the same language in a different font, and it's naive to think that because it's not happening to you right now that you're not next in line for that stripping of your rights. And it's scary. And I think especially like you were just saying with Section 28 being imposed, I didn't really understand really the gravitas of that until we started doing this process. It was still in place when I was at school, which I didn't know. And, would things have been different for me growing up if we had that? I don't know. But it's really important, I think, that we learn about that and how there's always a scapegoat, right?
Well, it's a common enemy, isn't it? You create a common enemy that everyone else can jump on that bandwagon, and, in a few years' time, it could be you. So just, think about,
And my favourite lyric in the show is in our final song. It's called We Got the Power. The lyrics are, when circumstances drive you to it, roll your sleeves up, you can do it. We'll take matters into our own hands. And I think that message is like the perfect takeaway for the show. And
it's very much like the people who have the power aren't going to do the job that we need to do. So, we've got to take it on ourselves.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful show as well. I mean, some of the songs in it as well are just beautiful and funny and really, really well written. And you're taking it to London next, aren't you? To the Southwark Playhouse, which is one of my favourite theatres in London. I love the Southwark Playhouse.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, how do you think it will go? That feels like a bit of a big question.
It's interesting. Yeah. We're all, excited, but
a little bit nervous,
apprehensive, because it's such a Sheffield story.
I think if the audiences up here weren't so incredible, it would feel less of a scary jump. But it's just been...
We've got big shoes.
We've had standing O's every night. We had to do an extra encore because the audience refused to leave.
I was halfway out my costume. SM came around and was like, get back on stage.
Yeah. And I think that is what will make it feel a little bit more extreme. But I think that, again, like, all the Southerners need to learn more about Northern stories.
And there's a lot of Northerners in London.
Yeah.
So, we'll get some friendly faces.
I think what's been amazing as well is so many of the audiences up here have been like 60 plus.
Yes.
And obviously for such a queer forward story, we were a bit like, oh gosh, how will that be received? But they loved it. And like, even I think, if you're not queer, you're not Northern, but you are of that age and you lived through the 80s, there's still so much that you'll remember, like the mining strikes, the industry closing down, Maggie Thatcher, there's something I think that everyone can see in it, and therefore it makes it inclusive.
Yeah, it will be interesting. Definitely, yeah.
I think it's very feminist as well, isn't it? And I think actually some of the stuff there, my mum would be right behind that thing about women were only allowed to do certain jobs. My mum's, is retired now, but was a gardener later on, and they were all, these were jobs that people didn't necessarily associate with women, and so there's all sorts of different themes with it as well. But I also know that the Southwark Playhouse audiences are really lovely and very used to new work. And I mean, thinking about the venue specifically you're going into, which is the Borough venue, which is where Operation Mincemeat kind of grew from, and they've had all sorts of shows there, so you will find an audience there, and they are a generous audience. And I'm just thinking of all the shows I've seen at Southwark Playhouse, and it really feels like a very good fit there.
And it's selling really well.
Yeah.
Which we didn't know how that would go, but the first 2 weeks are like coming up to nearly sold out. Yeah. So, and we sold out the rest of the run up here.
Yes,
like almost immediately, which was so special.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Well, if you're listening to this and you're in London, you definitely need to try and catch this over the next few weeks at Southwark Playhouse, because it's such a wonderful show, and there's so many things that you'll find to kind of connect yourself to it as well. So I think that's really exciting. If you want to follow us on social media, you can use queer.musicals on Instagram or Facebook, or you can follow me at Dr. James Lovelock on Instagram. were talking just before we started recording about some of the shows with queer characters in. So I was wondering if you could tell us about some of the other shows that you've done.
Yeah, I have been lucky enough to do a lot of queer theatre. I did a show called Lady Friends a few years ago, which we started doing in Manchester, but it was about sort of loosely based on two suffragettes who may or may not have been together and very much in love, and we've all decided they were.
Sure.
Because
they definitely were. We've decided that. Yes.
And that's queer history again. I did a show called Butterfly that was on at the Volts Festival, which it was sort of lots of different stories about groups of queer people or queer people throughout time. And my section specifically was about a group of people in the 80s in Cardiff. And more recently I did a show called Sappho at Southwark Playhouse at the Elephant Site. So the OG lesbian.
Exactly.
So
yes.
I've been lucky enough to sort of do a lot of queer stuff, queer theatre, and mostly historical shows, and that's great. But I think there's a space for new queer writing and new queer theatre, and
I think a good example of like the opposite end of the spectrum to that is my partner. She works backstage in town, and she's currently working on Titanic.
Oh, lovely!
Which is just the campest, most ridiculous, gayest musical I've ever seen, and it's cool that there is space in the theatre world for those like educational moments, but also like, just have you seen Titanic?
I have seen Titanic. Yes, yeah.
It's just great, like, and when I saw it, I was so shocked that there were like straight couples there, because I was like, how are you understanding anything that's going on? But like amazing that it's like full every night, and there's all these people that are just like, I love Celine Dion and I love gay people, so here we go.
And it's something we need as well, I think, definitely. It's almost like what would happen if a gay person wrote Titanic, the movie, and I love it so much. There's so much fun in it.
Yeah, and I think it's nice as well when the media and the government and everything can be so heavy, to just have something so completely ridiculous is just quite refreshing, because it's so silly.
It is.
But I think that's sort of the point, isn't it? Like, we have always existed, and we will always continue to exist. And no matter what hate gets thrown at us, or what laws get passed, or what happens, we're still going to be here.
And that show is such a good example of being unapologetically queer. Like, they haven't minced their word. Like, they've gone full steam ahead and said...
They might mince, but
lots of mincing, but no mincing of words.
I think it's so important that we have those sorts of shows. And it's funny because I've been talking a lot about how few shows there are with LGBTQ characters in the West End, but actually I'd forgotten Titanic as being one of those, I suppose because it doesn't have, it's still like a heterosexual couple at the centre of it, but very, very much queered up, so it's lovely to know that that's still running there as well.
And even on like a smaller scale, in terms of like very silly queer things, we both did an R&D with the director of Gwenda's Garage, Jelena, because she worked with a theatre company in the 80s called Slip of the Tongue, which is a lesbian theatre company.
Amazing.
And, back in the 80s, not many queer storylines, and they, in the 80s, put on an all lesbian female production of The Sound of Music.
Amazing.
It was just wild.
Yeah. And we'd already done the workshop for Gwenda's Garage, and I just remember getting an email being like, would you be interested in doing an R&D of a lesbian version of Sound of Music, and will you play Maria? And then texting Lucy and being like, are you also...
Yeah,
cool.
I was playing one of the children, I was playing Hans, I was playing...
And it was just, it wasn't, for any profitable reason, it wasn't to put it out any further. It was just a celebration and like almost a reunion for all of those women that had been part of that.
I think the original director or someone who's in it had died, and it was sort of to commemorate her.
And that was just absolutely ridiculous. But again,
there was a character in it called the Golden Vulva.
Yeah, at the end, instead of
exceptional.
escaping to Switzerland, they all exited the stage through the Golden Vulva.
I want that to be the ending to every musical now. Oh, imagine Les Miserables. No, let's not.
And they had the costume that they used in the 80s for the Golden Vulva. And it was,
but again, working with
treat.
so many queer women like in their 50s and 60s who are doing loads of different jobs. Like, they don't all work in theatre anymore, but like it was just such a silly time and just so nice to do something so stupid and gay and it be so
wonderful.
Celebrated.
Yeah, it's definitely what we need. I've got one more question for you. I was going to ask you if you have any hopes for the future of musical theatre. So what stories would you like musical theatre to tell in the future?
Ooh, that's a good one.
I think for me personally, as a queer woman who is quite femme presenting, I often find myself not being seen for queer roles because again there is still that stereotype of what a gay woman might look like and often it's like the token one gay woman in a story. I think just more stories like this that encompass all queer people, because there are very many ways to be queer, you know, and this show especially is so good for telling all of those different stories. All of us in the cast look completely different. All of our own like lives have been very different as queer women, but we all have that common ground. And I think it's just really important, not just for women, for men and non-binary people too, that those stories are told, because there are so many people out there. We had a schools workshop yesterday, which we were all a bit scared about.
Well, you don't know how they're going to
and like they absolutely loved it. During like right near the end of the show, there's a kiss between two of the women in the cast, and we've not had a louder response to that kiss than when we had a group of school children in. And I just think that that representation is so important for queer people growing up. So that's why I would say.
Yeah,
I think for me it's like what we were talking about earlier, just showing that queer people are real people, have so many different sides, and we're not this stereotype. But I think also I'd personally love to see more trans storylines being told. I think every aspect of the queer umbrella, I guess you could call it, just I want us to try and step away from, you know, the camp gay best friend trope, or, you know, I think having just normalizing queerness and putting a light on it is so important. Just more of it, because if there's more of it, then it can be different and it can be as nuanced as other shows are, or other characters have been written, and just showing every aspect of queer life.
And I listened to your episode with Lauren Redding where you talked about standing at the sky's edge, and I think that's the perfect example of how you write a queer character who is just, that's the least important thing about their character. Like, she is a queer woman in that show and she has the same amount of stage time as everyone else, and she is just in love with a woman, and that is like, to get to a point where that is the least interesting part of your character.
Them just being people rather than queer people. But we need to go through that before we can get to the end. But
no, absolutely. Well, thank you both so much. Thank you for being part of Gwenda's Garage, first of all, which is going to be so important in getting towards that kind of thing that we've just been talking about. But thank you also for being on the podcast. It's been lovely to have you.
Thanks for having us.
And, and thank you everybody for listening at home, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Represent, the Queer Musical Theatre Podcast. This episode was recorded in the media department of Sheffield-Hallam University and was hosted by Dr. James Lovelock from the BA Acting and Performance course. Join us again soon to investigate another new musical with queer protagonists. And if you're interested in your musical being featured on Represent, please get in touch through our social media channels. See you soon. Bye.